Torah for the Parsha of Yisro. It is taken from the Novi Yishayahu, the 6th chapter. But in reality, this is the initial prophecy of the Novi. It is the one that inaugurates him into Nevuah and gives him the stature of a Novi. It was at the time of the death of the king Uzziyahu. Uzziyahu was also called Azariah. Didn't die then, but he became a leper. He suffered from leprosy, from Saraz. And because of that, he is called B'Shnat Mos HaMelech Uzziyahu, at the time of his death. And the Talmud tells us that a Metzorah is Choshev K'meis, one of the people that is considered as though the person is dead, even though physically the person is alive, is someone that is a leper. The Navi describes. Chazal tell us that we have two descriptions in Tanakh of visions of heaven, visions of God, at the beginning of prophecy. One is the Navi Yishayahu and one is the Navi Yechezkel. The first chapter in the prophet Ezekiel and the prophet Yechezkel. In the Navi Yechezkel, which Haftorah we read on the first day of Shavuot, because here we read this Haftorah from the Parsha of Yisro, because Yisro is the Parsha of the granting of the Torah, the revelation on Har Sinai. So it's a description of revelation of God. That's the connection to the Haftorah, which is the revelation of God in prophecy to Yeshayahu. And Shavuot, which also is the anniversary of the revelation of God on Sinai. So we read the revelation of God as seen by the prophet Yechezkel, by the prophet Ezekiel. However, we find that the prophet Yechezkel is much more descriptive and much more wondrous in his description of what he sees in heaven, whereas the Navi Yeshayahu is somewhat more blasé. He is somewhat more restrained in his description. So the Talmud says, as only the Talmud can, that the comparison is Yeshayahu is a big city boy. And therefore, you show him the big city, he doesn't gape. But Yechezkel is from the country. He's a small town boy, and therefore, when he sees all it is, so he's unrestrained in his description and his impression of it. What Chazal meant by that was that the Navi Yeshayahu was such a great and wondrous personality, so to him his role as a prophet and his nearness, so to speak, to the Rebbeinu Shalom was more natural. Whereas the Navi Yechezkel, it was a tremendous elevation. It was a break with his natural state. There are people, I don't know how to put it without being misunderstood, but I'm willing to risk that. There are people whose religion is natural. Judaism is natural to them. So it's done not with less piety, and not with less conviction, but it's done with less fancy. It's not such an issue. And there are people whose religion is not really natural to them. And because of it, therefore, their behavior and their application of it sometimes takes on such an intense relationship that it's difficult for other people to deal with. So that's the Navi Yeshayahu, how shall we phrase it, he's a natural Navi. Whereas the Navi Yechezkel is the Ben Far, who is the prophet that comes from the country, so to speak. So it's much more intense. So he describes the wondrous creatures and the angels and the color and the electricity and the lightning and everything. The Navi Yeshayahu is he's like describing a room in someone's house, because to him it is more natural. So that's why Hashem Yoshev al Kisei Ron Benisa. I saw God sitting upon the great and exalted throne. This is the origin of the prayer that we say, Melech HaYoshev al Kisei Ron Benisa. God who sits, the King who sits upon upon the great and exalted throne. The great and exalted throne of God. V'shulav Malayim et ha'eichel. Now, here again we have an anthropomorphic description, a description of God in human terms. Shulav are his coattails. That's the original literal meaning of shulav. So Rashi and most of the Meforshim say that the shulav kaviyachol refers to God, that God's coattails, what a God is wearing, so to speak, fills the entire palace, whatever that means. The Gaon, the Vilna, says that shulav doesn't refer kaviyachol to Rabbanu Shalom because that would be too physical, but shulav means the throne. The throne is so large that the ends of the throne fill the entire palace that the Navi sees. So the word shulav, according to the Gaon, refers to the ends of the throne, not the ends of the coat. Others say, the Radak and others say that it means that God's glory. Shulav, I think, is the glory, right? There's, so to speak, there's the Rabbanu Shalom himself, and then there's God's radiance, God's glory. The glory fills the halo. Srofi Romdi Mimalo. And I saw that above the throne in heaven there are flaming angels, fiery angels. Sheish knafayim le'echad. And each one of the angels has 6 wings, 3 sets of wings. Vishtayim yechase pono. 2 wings cover the angel's face. Vishtayim yechase raglav. And 2 wings cover the feet of the angel. The rabbis say that because the feet of the angels were split hooves, like the calf, like the bull. And so therefore it's covered so as not to remind the heavenly tribunal of the sin of the Jewish people in fashioning the golden calf. U'ishtayim yofei, the 2 wings he flies with. So again, the description is of a 6-winged creature whose face is covered, so that the reason the face is covered so that even the angel is not allowed to gaze on the radiance of God. The difference is of such a major consequence that the angel cannot look. Now we have here, this is the origin of the prayer that we say, that's part of our davening every day of the year, that we call Kedusha. We rise and say the Kedusha. We imitate, so to speak, the angels. Their prayer becomes our prayer. And that's what we say in the davening, the Kadesh Shishimcha Ba'olam. We shall sanctify your name in this world, Kishem Shemakdishim Oso B'Shmei Morom, in the same fashion that it is sanctified in heaven. Kakosu Vayad Neviecha, as it is written by your prophets, meaning the Navi Yeshayahu. And what happens is, V'kora Zel Zev Yomar, one angel calls to the other, like the Chazan calls to the Tzibur to recite the Posuk of Kodesh. Or in this Asfad, the same thing, Naritov and Akdisha. We will exalt you, we will praise you, K'tzot Tziyah Sarfei Kodesh, as is the conversation of the heavenly bodies in heaven that say to each other again, Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. So our concept of saying Kedusha is an imitation of the service of the angels and God to the Rabbanu Shalom. That's the holiness of Kedusha. And from that emanate certain customs. In Yiddish there's a phrase, Springen Kodesh, that when they say Kodesh, they dance on the balls of their feet. They raise themselves. That's because the angels, they saw that in heaven. And when the angels said Kodesh, so that they uplifted themselves, they strained themselves. So we too, the halacha is that that's also why we stand Shemon Esrei with our feet at attention. It's because he saw that in heaven. It says, V'ragleim regel yeshora, their feet were straight. And when they stood in the service of the Rabbanu Shalom, they stood at attention, their feet were straight. So all of our service is an imitation of the vision of the idea. So in effect, what are the rabbis telling us, and what part of the prayer service, is that we are no less in the service of God than the angels. And that not only that, we're entitled, because we would say, how are we entitled to say what the angels say? But man is entitled more than the angels. The famous conversation that we always see among the rabbis between human beings and angels, the angels always lose. Just like in American League. That the reason for that is that human beings are superior, because the angels didn't want to give the Torah to Moshe. So God said to Moshe, refute them. So Moshe said, you don't have the yisro hara, and we do. No trick to be an angel. The trick is to be a human being. God created us with inner drives and problems and a difficult circumstance and everything else, all the problems in life. So the Torah is ours. And God agreed, so to speak, with Moshe. The Torah comes to earth. So the human being is more exalted than the angel. And in fact, in Jewish tradition, in Jewish legend, human being is the cause of angels. I'm sure you've heard it. Every time a person does a good deed, an angel is created, and every time a person does another deed, so something else is created. And if you do half a good deed, so then a crippled angel is created. That's the Jewish tradition, right? There are a lot of maimed and walking wounded. So all of that stems from this idea, the idea that the Navi is promoting here, the idea of the fact that the exalted quality of the human being, that we are entitled to the prayer of the angel. He brings it down to us, and we recite it. Kadosh v'kora zel zevi omar. One angel called to the other and said, Kadosh, 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 Hashem tzvokos malocha haaretz kvodo. So that's the main pasuk in the kedusha. That's the verse in kedusha. So Rashi says, v'kora zel zevi omar again. You see that all of these are customs in our prayer. That kedusha, first of all, has to be said with a minyan, and the chazan has to call the people to say it. And only when he calls, and the absolute correct way to do it is to do it in unison, which is what they do in heaven. Rashi says, in heaven, that nobody can say before the other. They all say equally at the same time. You go in certain yeshivas, and the Musar yeshivas, etc., so they always say, that pasuk they say together, in unison. Just like they say the Kaddish in unison. Unfortunately, in the synagogue, which is more egalitarian, which everyone has, so many of the niceties have been lost, unfortunately. But the Kodosh, 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 the Chazan is supposed to repeat that. That's the ikar of the kedusha. So many times the Chazan starts singing on Shabbos, Kvodo Malei Olam. He's supposed to say Kodosh. Kvodo Malei Olam is it's an appendage. It's extra. But the ikar kedusha is Kodosh, Kodosh, Kodosh. Malocha haaretz kvodo. God's glory fills the entire universe. So here we have one of the most difficult philosophic ideas, which I'm not going to get into because I don't know how to get out of it. But the fact that God exists everywhere has, in the long history of man's thought, led to many really heretic and non-godly ideas about God. Chief of which was Spinoza's idea of pantheism, which eventually did away with God and said nature was God. Originally, God was everywhere in nature. Eventually, nature became God, which is what we believe in the secular world today. The secular Western man believes in nature. All the problems, everything is, that's nature. As though there's something called but that's a phrase that Western man uses to allow Western man to avoid the religious confronting of the situation of how does the universe work? Where does it begin? Where does it end? How can it be so perfect? The odds against it being perfect are enormous. So therefore, we by a semantic trick, which is always a human ability, depends how you call it, right? Nobody buys a used car. It's a pre-owned car. So that has removed the stigma of driving I always hear the ad for Porsche or Jaguar, one of those, one of those cars that is more than basic transportation. So they never have a used Porsche to sell, right? It's they advertise a pre-owned 1977 deluxe Porsche, like it's still in the box, never was touched yet. But that's a semantic. Most of advertising is semantic. To be able to construct an image in our mind which blinds us to the reality. Cosmetics, the clothing generally, we are given over to that to that way of thinking and that way of doing. So here, nature took that role. Nature somehow substituted for God. But the idea of pantheism, the idea that God is found everywhere in nature, it's a very dangerous idea. There's been a lot of problems with it over the centuries. And therefore, Jews traditionally have backed off from the idea and have said, we don't know what it means, Maloch Haloretz Clothing, rather than to say that we do know what it means and that it leads to a distortion of what true godliness means. The same idea happened in Chassidus with the pasuk Ein Od Milvado, that there is nothing besides the Rabboni Shalom. So in the Zohar it says Ein Od Milvado means that God is the only reality that exists and there is no other reality. So literally, Ein Od, so we say Ein Od Milvado means there is no other God besides God, which is a great idea. Right? And that we can deal with somehow. But the Zohar doesn't say that. The Zohar says Ein Od Milvado is that there is nothing besides God. So the Balatanya says in the famous Shara Yichud, Shnei Zalman, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, he has his famous, one of the most thoughtful analyses of Jewish philosophy. It's so good that the Chassidim don't study it. It's like banned because it's too philosophical, it's too close. But he mentions there in his shot that Ein Od Milvado is that there's no other reality in the world besides God. Everything else, song, merrily, 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 life is but a dream, that's the shot. Life is, this is all a dream. This is not reality. I know sometimes you have that feeling, but he really means it. And the Gaon of Vilna disputed that very hotly. And the Nefesh HaChaim of Reb Chaim Volozhiner, which is the book of philosophic confrontation to Chassidus. That's the basic book that came to refute or to dispute many of the philosophic ideas of Chassidus. The struggle in Chassidim Misnagdim was on many different levels. So the level that we always think of is really the bottom level, which is dress and custom and external form, etc., which the people makes a difference. But that wasn't the main struggle. The main struggle was philosophic, which only very few people were therefore engaged in. And the Gaon and Reb Chaim Volozhiner and Nefesh HaChaim, they have a completely different interpretation of Ein Od Milvado. They say life is real, it's not a dream. So, because of all of these problems with it, and the basic philosophic problems and the Kabbalistic problems in dealing with it, so we don't deal with it. We don't know what Maloch Haloretz Klodo means. But we know that the angels say it, and that apparently, therefore, it's an acceptable praise to God. God will accept it. And therefore, that's why we give the introduction that we are going to praise you the way you're being praised in heaven. We don't know what you were saying, but we're going to do it. Sometimes you hear a child that's a very good mimic. So he mimics things that he or she does not know, does not understand, but they say it. It's very cute. It's nice. You have a child that uses big words. Even if the child does not know the meaning of the words, the child has pain because of that. The child has a specific attraction because of that. Oh, isn't that cute? So we mimic the angels. We don't know what it means, but we mimic it. We say it because they say it. That's the pshat in Kedusha. That's why we rise for Kedusha. That's how we stand straight. That's why we don't talk. That's why it's one of the few moments when allegedly we have everyone's attention, at least to the God. Because we are mimicking a prayer that we know is acceptable to the Lord. Vayanu amos hasitim. The Navi Yeshayahu says that the pillars of the door, of the threshold, Vayanu, shook, trembled. All of the universe trembles when the angels praise God. God's awesome quality is such that all of the universe trembles. In Jewish thought, the fact that the universe is in constant motion is one of the basic ideas that we know now from astrophysics. Right? The expanding universe. It's impossible for us to imagine it. But we are rushing away from other galaxies in terms of hundreds of millions of miles every day. And the whole universe is just rushing away from each other. But the space that we are in is so vast that it doesn't look like anything is happening. But we're farther away today than we were yesterday from our nearest galaxy. In real terms. That, well, you don't know how to deal with that. That there is such a thing as the theory of the expanding universe, that the whole universe is in motion. And the Rabboni Shalom is not in motion. Because motion occurs only in time and in space. That's the only way of measuring motion. We can measure motion from the distance that it takes me to come from this side of the room to that side of the room. That's one type of motion. Or that it took me 10 seconds to get to the other side of the room. So I know that I have to be in motion because I'm missing that space and time. But God is above time and above space. Therefore, by definition, God is not in motion. That's why in Hebrew, God is called Shechina. It's called at rest. To differentiate from the rest of the universe, which is constantly in motion. That's why on Shabbos we imitate the Rabboni Shalom by being at rest. There are laws regarding motion, how far we can go on Shabbos, how fast we can go. Because that's our imitation of the Creator. That's our statement of the created world. So that's the underlying interpretation here by Yanu Amos Hasifim. The foundations shake, the whole world is in motion, the palace trembles. It doesn't stand still. Mikola Kore, from the voice of the angels that call forth God's glory. The Habayis Yimole Osha. And the house is filled with smoke, with fog, it is hidden. Now here we have the same idea. In the Beis HaMikdash, every day they would offer up a cloud of incense, an osha. And Rabboni Shalom Kaviyachol, his spirit is always represented. Kvod Hashem Moles Aboyes, God's glory descended in the Beis HaMikdash or in the Mishkan, so it always descends as a cloud, Amud Onon. So that is also in the Beis HaMikdash, that was the earthly representation of God's palace, so to speak, in heaven. So therefore we also offered up a cloud. And there was one of the ingredients that had to be in the Ktoris, in the incense, was a spice that was called Male Oshon. It was a spice that made smoke. That was its purpose. It caused smoke. Because if smoke did not rise, then the incense was improper. So this, again, is shrouded in mystery, right? It's all smoke for us. But it gives us, even though it is hidden from us, it gives us some insight, at least into our prayers. Well, Omar, so the Navi said, I said to myself, oily, woe to me, that I'm here. What kind of a dream? What am I doing here? Kinidmesi, I am struck mute. What can I say? It's like sometimes somebody comes into a room that he sees something that he should not see. And he realizes instantly that he shouldn't be there. So that can happen among human beings, that can happen in a family, that can happen in a business, that can happen in a dangerous situation too. He walks into the control rooms of something. Here the Navi says, what am I doing here? I am unworthy. I am a person whose lips have been defiled. How can I say, that's what the Navi says, how can I go back to earth and say, Kadosh, 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 after I've seen heaven? Because I use my mouth to say other things too. You know, pass the ketchup. Please. So how am I going to say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh? I am a person of improper, impure words, impure mouth and tongue. I can't say it anymore. And now he says the kicker, so and I am dwell amongst the people that are impure, that have an impure mouth. I hear what they say. Right? You hear what people say, right? You even hear what people say in holy places, let alone in places that are not holy. And the Navi sees the cloud of smoke in heaven that I mentioned to you before as being a reflection of God's wrath against the Jewish people. We find, especially in the Navi Yeshayahu, that it's so hard. It's one thing if somebody understands you or appreciates you and just doesn't want to do it. Right? So it's a matter of choice. But there's nothing as frustrating as trying to deal with someone or educate someone or raise someone who just doesn't understand what in the world you want them. Somebody understands, right? And he doesn't want it or she doesn't want it. Okay, it's a free country, right? It's a free choice. But someone that doesn't understand, that doesn't begin to have a clue as to what in the world you really want from him, that's the height of frustration. And that's true of employers, it's true of teachers, it's true of parents, it's true of everything. It's the most frustrating thing. So the Rabboni Shalom that's pictured by the Navi Yeshayahu, Kaviyachol, that's God's frustration. God's frustration is not that the Jewish people are sinners. They just don't they don't get it. They don't begin to understand what he wants them. And that's God's wrath. That's the pillar of cloud, the smoke that he sees. Is so to speak, the manifestation of God's frustration with us. I want you to be a great and holy people. I always mention it to you regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, right? That the Jewish people came and complained to Moshe that they didn't like the menu in the desert. We find that the menu is always very important by the Jewish people. From day one, right? The yeshiva is the single item that I get the most complaints about. Too much pizza, not enough pizza, too much this, chicken again, meat again, whatever. Why don't they just have peanut butter and jelly? Every day, the menu. Times in So, Motion affects them to God. He said, well, I'm talking to them about God. And I'm talking to them about the Holy Land. And I'm talking to them about the future and about eternity. And they talking to me about pickles. That's a conversation. That's an impossible conversation. If they say, we don't want Eretz Yisrael. Okay, he's not dying. He doesn't want it. Okay? If he says, I don't want God. He's an atheist. That I also, I can deal with it. But I can't deal with pickles. I can't deal with that. There's no way that I can bridge that gap. And that's where Moshe, he loses himself. That's God's frustration, the Navi says. He says, after I've seen heaven, I see Kodesh, Kodesh, God, I see what God is, and I see everything, and I'm sitting amongst those people, I'm Tmeis Messiah, and I hear what their conversation is and what their interests are. What can I do? How do I relate to that? How do I relate to problems of cosmic eternity with people who are, whose main conversation is what color wallpaper they're going to have in their kitchen? And that's the conversation in the synagogue, not in the kitchen. That's the conversation in God's house, is what color wallpaper. That's his frustration. And God says he's wrong. You got to be able to put up with that. My eyes saw the Rabboni Shalom. This is Harriet Beecher Stowe, right? My eyes have seen the glory, right? Taken straight from here. There's most good things in the world that are taken straight from here. He says, I've seen God, so what am I going to do? What are you going to do with me now, right? I'm ruined. And the Navi says, really, it's one of the most powerful images that exists in Tanakh is this description of Navi Yeshayahu. Not the description of heaven, but the description of the relationship to heaven. So one of the flaming angels flew to me, Uviyodo Ritzvah, and in his hand he held a tongs, pliers. I'm sorry, Ritzvah is a hot coal. He held a burning coal, an ember. Bamel Kochayim, with tongs. Meaning it's so hot the angel can't hold it. Lokach me'ala mizbeach, which he took from the altar, took from the incense. So our rabbis say that he took it from the altar. The altar was the source of kapora. And this is going to be a kapora for Yeshayahu for having said what he said, because he said the terrible damnation of the Jewish people. He said it's useless, right? That's in effect what he said. Useless. Scrap it. So that damnation he's punished for. But he's punished me'ala mizbeach, from the kapora, from the altar which brings forgiveness. The Gaon also says here, one of the famous insights is that a rabbi said many times that there were great people who were worthy of being a prophet, let's say, or were worthy of being a great leader, or were worthy of great spiritual greatness, but they lived in a generation that was unworthy of them, and because of that they didn't achieve it either. Our Rabbi Sayer, really a tremendous insight is that you can't do it on your own. You have to, you can't. The generation of the Gaon of Vilna, the generation of the Baal Shem Tov was entitled to the Baal Shem Tov and the Gaon of Vilna. In our generation, the Gaon wouldn't be the Gaon. Ein ador rohui lakach. The generation is not worthy of it. If the generation is not worthy of it, then the individual cannot rise to those heights. Our rabbis say that that's why the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest generation of Jews, even though they did many things wrong, but they were the greatest generation of Jews we ever had, because then they were worthy of Moshe. Moshe could only live in that climate. So our rabbis, that's really the paraphrase of the saying that we all know, is that everybody gets the leaders that they deserve. By that, it's meant that, you really don't get more than what you deserve. Because a person that's so much greater than his flock, than those whom he is supposed to lead, so then that's a mismatch. Our rabbis say, therefore, Yiftach the Dorah Kishmuel the Dorah. Yiftach in his generation was what Shmuel was in his generation, even though there's no comparison between the two, at least on the surface, that Shmuel is a much greater man, but Shmuel in Yiftach's generation would not have been Shmuel. He could not have been. Couldn't have done it. That's the difference between our generations, for instance, between Eastern European Jewry and American Jewry, in spite of all of our accomplishments, noble as they are. It's just not the same. So here also, the Navi said, and even if I am worthy, behold, I am amongst the people that is unworthy. If the people are unworthy, then what will ever be with me? There's no room for me either. So this angel flew to him, Vayiga Alpi, and he touched my mouth with the burning coal. That's what you get for talking against the Jewish people. God does not like to hear complaints. Right, that Ludnik is here again. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like to hear complaints about the Jewish people. You want to complain about the Jewish people, complain to the Jewish people. Don't complain about the Jewish people. That elementary lesson is unfortunately lost upon men. I always mention that the rabbis find themselves sometimes in terrible frustrations or in moments of black moods, so they complain to God. They say, you gave me a bunch of people like this, all right? What am I supposed to do with them terrible people? God doesn't like that. Not at all. Tell it to them. Tell it to the board. Don't tell it to God. God only wants to hear good about the Jewish people. We find that Moshe Rabbeinu, after his first experience, after Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu never says anything bad about the Jewish people in heaven. In heaven, he is their staunchest defender. On earth, he has a few things to say to them. Moshe told them hard words. But he told them, he didn't tell it in heaven. He didn't complain to God about the Jewish people. Vayomer, and the angel said to me, Hine noga zel tzvosecha. This coal that has touched your lips, the sor avonecha, it has removed your sin. V'chatoscha techupar, and your iniquity has been forgiven. Don't talk about them anymore. Vayomer, leich v'amarta, I'm sorry, let's start. Ches. V'eshma es kol Hashem omer. Then I heard the voice of God. For the first time, God, Kaviyachal, enters into the discussion here. For the first time, God enters into the discussion. I hear God's voice. So the idea is that he hears God's voice after he has been burned. Before that, he doesn't hear it. And now, after he has undergone this humbling experience, so then he hears God, and he hears his mission. God says, Esmi eshlach umi yelech lanu. Whom shall I send? Umi yelech lanu. Who goes for us? Who's on our side? Who's willing to do it? So the Meforshim say that God always says that, but there are not that many takers. There are not many people who hear that message clearly. It's not that appealing. Tzmi yeshlach, whom shall I send? Umi yelech lanu, and who will go for us? Omar, and I answered, Hineni, I am here. Shlacheni, send me. Oh, God wants to hear that. I am prepared to volunteer for this thankless mission. Now the Gaon here says, again, a remarkable insight. It says, Mi yelech lonu, who will go for us? What does God do? Well, God does not, he doesn't speak in plural. Only man speaks, right? Human beings speak in a pompous fashion, we. God doesn't speak that way. God says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I. So what does he mean? Mi yelech lonu, who will go for us? The Gaon says there were prophets that went for God, and they never saw anything good in the Jewish people. There were prophets who went for the Jewish people, and they always complained against God. God said, I want somebody to go for both of us. Who will go for us? Who will have the balance to see God's side of the picture and the Jewish people's side of the picture? It's very hard to be representative of both. Extremely difficult. In our legal system in the United States, so it's an adversarial system. You hire a lawyer, I hire a lawyer. Your lawyer will do everything for you, my lawyer will do everything for me. My lawyer does not get paid to come to me and say, the other guy really, he's right. I mean, he will not be very successful. He will not retain many clients being that fair. It's an adversarial system. Even if my client is guilty, I am obligated to provide him with the best defense. My obligation is to serve him. God is looking for someone who will not see it as an adversarial system. There are prophets. The Gaon mentions the prophet Elijah, for instance. Kano kinesi l'Hashem tzvakim. I am zealous for God. He's had it with the Jewish people. So he had it for the Jewish people. So he's on God's side. Good. Jewish people don't have anybody on their side. The prophet Yonah is so much on the side of the Jewish people that he's not willing to go on God's mission to Nineveh. God sends him to Nineveh. He doesn't want to go because he knows that the people in Nineveh will repent and that it will look badly for the Jewish people. So therefore he tries to escape his mission. He's not interested in serving God. He is on the side of the people. So the Gaon says that God looks for someone, mi'elech lonu, who will go for both of us. And the great insight here, and the great insight is that God and Israel are not adversarial relationships. Someone who goes for God really goes for Israel. And someone who goes for Israel really goes for God. You have to be great enough to realize that, to be able to see the ultimate joining of the two. So that's mi'elech lonu. One of the great, many great things that the Gaon says. You don't need my approbation. But this is one of the great insights, the most famous insights in Tanakh. Why the Noda uses the word lonu, who goes for us. God doesn't say, who go for me. As mi eshla, whom will I send? Yes, but who will go for both of us? Omar and I volunteer. Hineni shlacheni. Oh, so God says, that's another thing that we say. God does not give you a chance to resign. Once he accepts the job, then you're there. It's like being Jewish, once you are, that's it. You're there. No way out. So God doesn't give him a chance to think about it. He already tells him what to do. Vayomer leich v'amar dalom hazeh. He didn't say, oh good, come Monday morning. Right? He didn't say, the guy said that. The guy needs notice, isn't it? That's not how you become a prophet. You see the same thing in the Novi Eliyahu and the Novi Elisha. He meets Elisha in the field. He's plowing. He throws his mantle over and comes. He says, I got to go say goodbye. Now, what are you doing? Come on. That's it. Now. The calling does not allow hesitation. Leich So tell this people, Shimu Shamoa, listen to what I have to say. Even though Ve'al Tovinu, you will not understand it. Even though you've lost your ability to really understand. You're going to see great things. Valtedo, and you don't know what's happening to you. I often say that's our generation, right? You see great things and you don't know what that, you don't get it. Don't appreciate it. Ashmei Leval Mazeh. People's heart is fat, covered with layers of fat. You can't reach it. That's always the expression that's used in the Torah. Avisa, Kasisa, Shamanta, Avisa. You're so fat you can't get through. The Oznav Hachde, and the ears are so heavy that you can't hear. You're so stopped up. Eila Kosha, and your eyes are closed. You're so tired. You're drowsy. You cannot see. You can't see. You can't hear. You can't understand. Your emotions are dead. So God says, better to make them that way. This is one of the great sarcastic psukim in Tanakh. Pen yireh be'eino, lest he will see. U'v'yoznov yishma, and he will hear. U'levav yovin, and his heart will understand. V'shov v'rofalo, and then he can cure himself. He can do tshuva and be healed. Well, why should he? Right? It's better to. That's the sarcasm. Omar, so I said, Admosai Hashem, how long will this go on that they won't hear? So God tells him the terrible news, that they won't wake up in time. Vayomer ad asherim sha'u orimein yoshev, cities will be desolate without inhabitants. Uvoti mein odom, and houses without people. V'adoma tishoeh shmoma, and the land of Israel will be desolate, barren. V'richak Hashem es Adam, and man will be pushed aside by God. The country will be empty. V'ravo ha'azuva b'kerev ha'oretz, and great will be the desolation, the loneliness, the isolation, what has been discarded amongst the land. Only then, right? Until then, they don't understand. You don't get it. But the old bo Assyria is a difficult word. Assyria here, usually most proportions say it means a tenth, a remnant. So some say that it means that 10 kings will yet exist to the end. All sorts of pshat. Some say that there are 10 levels yet in the Jewish people, and the top level will still remain. Others say Assyria was a weight, a measure that was well known for them. That weight will still be there. Everything else will be destroyed. And they will survive. That will be the one that will survive. The Shava v'hoisa lavoyer, and even that remnant will be burned out. So he describes here, Rashi learns it's like making gold. You burn the metal and burn it, keep on burning it till the dross falls out. There's only a little left at the end. That's the story of Jewish people. The end will be that there'll be a remnant, but so much will have been burned out. Ko'elo v'cho'alon, like the great oak, the terebinth tree, asher b'shaleches matzeves bo, that when they were thrown on the fire, they, the description of being a log on the fire, but they are also planted in matzeves, and they are long-standing trees. They survive. Some say it refers many times in a forest fire. Not all the trees are destroyed. For some reason, there are trees that survive, and from those trees, the new trees come. Forest is new to come. Zera Kodesh Matzavta. The Jewish people are a holy seed, and therefore they will survive. They will stand again. So even though they don't understand it, even though they'll be subjected to such a terrible fate, nevertheless they will survive. And in their survival lies the vindication for everything that God has said. And that's the vision, this vision of the Navi Yeshayahu.
Next week on Living, we'll see the second half of the Haftarah, which is the next chapter, which really doesn't have anything to do with this chapter. We'll discuss